So yesterday for the basics of Excel, we covered these topics: cells, ribbon rows, name references, control shift functions, data types, good data, bad data, formatting, different tabs, sort and filter, basic arithmetic formulae and statistical formulae, hard coding, soft coding, different types of copy paste, pivot tables, charts, tables, and a few other formulae and a couple of shortcuts. So I hope that those who are very fresh to Excel have gone through the formulae again. And if you have any doubts regarding that, then you can always check the YouTube recording, for which the link I have shared. And if you still have any further doubts, then you have my number, so you can always contact me for the same. Now today we will be looking at lookup functions, conditional and custom formatting, the rank function, then goal seek and solver, if and other variants of the formula, drop downs, return calculation formula, formatting errors, other formulae. If you have any requests, then you can send me that as well. If we have time, then I will cover those formulae. And I'll share a few more resources for learning, because my knowledge is also limited, so I can only teach you so much in the 2.5 hours. So let's begin the session for today with the lookup function, and let's use yesterday's data once again. So for yesterday's sports equipment transaction list, I had used this table as a base table. That what is the equipment that is there in the store, what is the per unit cost, what is the category of the item, and who is the supplier. So this is just a sample data set that I have prepared for it. Now in yesterday's table, I have serial number, date, customer, product, units, cost, and amount. Now say if I want the category of all the items, then I can't possibly go and check the other data table every time that, okay, this is a golf ball. Let's go here. What is the category of the golf ball? Golf. What is the per unit cost? 100. Who is the supplier? Raju. So each time you cannot go and check that manually, because if there are just a few items, then it is easily possible. Whereas if you have lots of data, then it becomes challenging. So for that, we use a function which is called as a lookup function. If that is done vertically, then it is called as VLOOKUP. If that is done horizontally, then it is called as HLOOKUP. But for those who are using the latest version of Excel, there is also a function called as XLOOKUP. VLOOKUP and HLOOKUP work pretty much same. So I'll just be covering the VLOOKUP. And XLOOKUP, I'll just show how it works. If your Excel has that functionality, then great. You should start using that. If not, then VLOOKUPs also works just fine. So again, for any formula, you have to press is equal to VLOOKUP, press tab. Now it will show you different parts that you need to fill in for the formula. So first is the lookup value. So what are we exactly looking for, and what's the reference for that? So the lookup value that we want is golf ball. Then from what table is the data where we are looking for the data? So this is the table. So in the table array over here, we will select this array and comma. What is the column index number? So L was the first column, M is the second column, N is the third column. So we are looking for category. So I will press comma 3 and then comma. Now whether it's an approximate match or whether it's an exact match, so that we more often than not don't need to use. So you can just press 0 and then end the formula. So now we can see that the category of the golf ball is golf. Now yesterday we saw that whenever we copy and paste a formula, we can find the answers to it. So now if we just copy and paste the formula, we should get all the answers, right? But in some of the situations, it shows NA. So why is that being shown? Because yesterday I taught something called as relative and absolute reference. When I selected this cell, the formula was applied to the full table. But when I move to the cell below and I have just pasted the formula, the table row has shifted downwards. When I move to the third row, the table has shifted further downwards. And here it has gone quite below. And if we see, we are looking for the leather ball. But when in the formula, the leather ball row is already skipped. And hence the NA is being seen. So now to fix this, whenever we are doing a VLOOKUP formula, we need to fix the reference from which we are selecting the table array. So for fixing that, yesterday, as I said, you have to press F4. Then we see the dollar sign, $O, $13. Go to L3 as well, press F4. So $L3, $O13. So now that the formula is fixed, now if you copy and paste the whole thing, now you can see that there is no NA, there is no error. And we have the answer. Now, sometimes for lookups, you might have an item which is not present in another table. For example, instead of golf ball, if this was, say, golf cap. Now, since golf cap is not available in this table, it will give you NA. So VLOOKUP function can also be used to see whether each item from one table is present in another table and vice versa. So whenever you have two separate sheets where you have similar data, you can use the VLOOKUP function to see whether the data is matching exactly or whether there are certain gaps. So wherever there is NA, you can know that this table does not have the golf cap. Now for VLOOKUP, we had to count the number of columns and then press the number 3 to see that, okay, this column, I want the final result to come back. Now, for a shorter table like this, it becomes very easy. But say I have a long table with a long list of data. In such a situation, counting the columns or just seeing the number isn't always practical. So in the latest version of Excel, there is a formula called as XLOOKUP. So similar to VLOOKUP, we just press is equal to XLOOKUP. Selecting the lookup value remains same, comma. Now it shows lookup array instead of table array. So now where do we want to search the golf ball? It is in this equipment part. Now again, we have to freeze the selection. So we will press F4. Now the reference is absolute. Now, comma, what is the return that we want? Return is the category. Again, we have to freeze the selection. We will press F4. And now if we press comma, then it will say if not found, match mode, search mode, etc. But we don't generally need to use that. So you can just close the bracket and press enter. It gives the same answer, but the good thing is that now you know exactly which row and which column you are selecting. Another difference between XLOOKUP and VLOOKUP is that for VLOOKUP, you had to count the columns from left to right. So if there is some data to the left of your lookup array, then you cannot find the answer. So for example, if I had to search for the equipment based on the category, then it is leftward. So I wouldn't be able to search it. When I have to look for the category from the equipment, the category is to the right. So that I can do with VLOOKUP. Whereas for XLOOKUP, this issue is not there, since I can independently select the lookup array and I can independently select the return array. Right? So this is the XLOOKUP and VLOOKUP function. Now VLOOKUP, we look vertically, and XLOOKUP, we can do horizontally or vertically. Now, instead, if we wanted to do horizontal lookup, then the same thing would be applied as H lookup. Now, you can just explore the H lookup function. It is the same as V lookup, so I won't spend extra time doing that. Now, for some of you, this might be slightly complicated. So if you have any queries for X lookup or V lookup, if you want me to go over it again, you can just ask me right now. I'll wait for a minute or so. If there is no query for VLOOKUP, XLOOKUP, then I can move ahead with the session. If it's clear, then you can give a thumbs up in the reactions tab. Okay, I see one thumbs up from Nikita. For the rest, is it clear? Okay, I see a few more thumbs up. So I'll move to the next formula then. So the next on our agenda is conditional formatting. So again, we will use the basic data that we had used yesterday. Now, conditional formatting is used for multiple different functions. Say, for example, I have to identify values that are higher than 500 rupees. Or if I just want to show a color scale of which are the bigger amounts, which are the smaller amounts. So I'll show you a few uses of conditional formatting, and you can just explore in that for whatever purpose you will have. So you have to select whatever data that is there. Now let's use the conditional formatting for the amount of the transactions. Conditional formatting can be found in the home tab right here. Now highlight cell rules. Now here you will see the different rules that are there. Highlight cells which are greater than, less than, between, equal to, if there is a specific text or a date or duplicate values and so on. Now you can also highlight top 10 items, top 10 percentage, bottom 10 percentage, above average, below average, and so on. Data bars will show you how much is the amount in each of the individual cells. And color scales will give you a gradient of which is the bigger amount, which is the smaller amount, and so on. So firstly, let's go with this color scale. This is a descending order. So whichever are the bigger amounts, they will be more towards the greener side. Whichever are the smaller amounts, they will be more towards the redder side. Now let's check if this is actually working. For that, we will again filter this data. So you can go to data and filter. And then clicking here, you can sort it largest to smallest. Now, if we see the biggest amount that was 6,000 is the greenest. And if we keep on scrolling downwards, and the smaller amounts are becoming redder. So if you have already sorted this data, then it just adds some prettiness to the data. But where the data is not sorted, or whether the data is in a different format, so here it is easy to identify which are the cells or which is the period having a bigger amount. So if you just, without this, while scrolling, if I ask you which cell has bigger amounts, then you will have to actually pay a lot of attention to see that, okay, which cell has 6,000, this cell has 6,000, and this cell has 6,000. And if you do this manually, then it takes up a lot of your time. Instead, if you are using conditional formatting and you go to color scales and use this function, now it's just about giving it a glance. While scrolling, you can see that, okay, this amount is greener, 5,200. This is the greenest, 6,000. Again, scrolling, 6,000, 6,000, 6,000, 6,000, 6,000, and so on. So now you can easily identify which are the bigger amounts, which are the smaller amounts. And this is just a 200 line item sheet. Where there are, say, thousands of items, a quick scroll, and you can identify which are the smaller and bigger amounts. For example, if I just zoom out using this function and I quickly go through this, then I can identify that, okay, this period or this period had bigger transactions. There were very few transactions or very small amounts during this period. Again, this period had good transactions. This period had less transactions. So giving a coloring scheme to this helps you easily identify what your data is and what is the trend of your data, right? Similarly, if in case this was amount that the customer still has to pay, the amount is due, then you can just reverse the scale. Instead of using the first one, you can use the second one. And now if you see, the bigger amounts are in red and the smaller amounts are in green. So you can easily identify which are the bigger pending amounts, since red stands out that way. So whenever you are looking at the data from a positive perspective, you can look for the first function. Whenever you are looking at the data from a negative perspective, you can look from the second function, right? Now, if we select the same data and go to conditional formatting and top 10 items, then it will give me how many items I want to actually select. The top 10 is just a standard reference. If I want the top 5, top 15, then I can select that over here. And here I can highlight it in whatever format I want. That, okay, green fill with dark green text. Okay. So now when I'm looking, I can easily identify that, okay, this is one of the top 15 items. This is one of the top 15. This is one of the top 15 and so on. Another way to identify is the greater than less than function. So if I want all the values that are, say, greater than 1000. So these are the preset formatting that you have. You can also give it a custom format that, okay, I want the number to be general. I want it to be italic. And I want the fill to be, say, dark red. If I click OK and OK, then now I can see that, okay, which are the numbers which are bigger than 1000. So whatever formatting you have to give, you can go to conditional formatting, highlight cell rules, greater than, less than, and so on. And then you can just highlight whichever function that is, whichever number that fits your criteria. So do you guys want to try it once at your end? Those who have not used the function before, I have shared it. Okay, Preeti is asking, can we design this as per our requirement? So can you just elaborate on that question? Which formula was the question for?
No, you mentioned about it, about the color schemes and customization. So that is resolved. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. Yesterday I had received feedback that you guys weren't able to follow along since the Excel sheet wasn't as good. So today you have the data along with you. So you can just try conditional formatting at your end. I can wait for a minute or two. Those who want to actually try it at their end, you can drop a message in chat that wait, you're trying or something like that. If not, then I'll move to the next function. I don't see any messages, so I'll move to the next function then. So lookups are done, conditional formatting is done. Now let's move to custom formatting. And sometimes you can use conditional formatting, sometimes you can use custom formatting based on whatever your need is. So this is one sheet which I had prepared for one of my clients. So this is the list of the mutual funds that they had. This was the amount in crores that they were rather lakhs that they were invested in. This was the gain that was there for every scheme. This was the scheme's return, the benchmark return, when the investment was made, what was the previous month alpha, and what was the current month alpha. Now, earlier, the table used to be just this much, or rather, the previous month alpha also wasn't there. So it was tough to see whether the performance is improving or whether it is going down. So that was hard to evaluate. So I added these two columns, and now you can easily see the downwards red arrow is where the performance is going down, and the upwards green arrow is where the performance is going up. Now, if the client just ignores the rest of the table and just looks at the last two columns, now they can see that, okay, this H column has conditional formatting, whichever are more than 0. So positive alpha is there. Alpha is return over the benchmark. So wherever there is positive alpha, it is highlighted in green. Whether there is negative alpha, it is highlighted in red. And now custom formatting is applied to the I column. So wherever the performance has improved since last month, there is a down arrow. Where the performance has where the performance has improved, there is a upwards green arrow, and where the performance has deteriorated, there is a downwards red arrow. So now let me just show you how the custom formatting works. So here the formula that I've put is the previous month alpha minus this month alpha, or rather current month alpha minus the previous month alpha. So here it shows 0.39. So it has reduced by that much. So now how to actually get this formatting? For that, you will have to press Control 1. Once you select a sheet, you have to press Control 1. There you will see this format cells function, or you can also go via this yesterday's data tab and click on more number formats. Now this format is slightly tough to read. So I'll just remove that for now. I'll paste it over here and I'll explain how the cell actually works. So 3 semicolons show how each of the positive, negative, and 0 should be shown. So wherever for the first part, you will have to click and enter how you want the positive numbers to be shown. Now, if you see to the right over here, I had written color 10, 0 point, hash hash. So that is the percentage, and then an upwards arrow. So upwards arrow I had inserted through the insert symbols function that I'll show you. Then the semicolon was there. Then I had selected the color red, then 0 point hash hash percentage, then the downwards arrow, then the semicolon. And I didn't want any specific formatting for the number 0. So I just kept it as it is. So now, if I go back, if I copy this, now if I go to custom formatting, I can see it over here. So instead of this, if I say blue, and if I say OK, then it will work. But for that, I'll have to select all the cells because the first cell was negative anyways. I'll go to custom formatting. I'll paste this. I'll click on blue. And press OK. So now the upwards arrows have become blue. Here now, instead of the numbers, if I just want the arrows to be there, I'll just change this back to the original color. So color 10 is one of the colors that is given by Microsoft. It is similar to green, but a darker shade. So now instead of the numbers and the arrows, if I just want the arrows to be there, then I'll just select this part and delete it. And select this part and delete it. So now it will be color 10, upwards arrow, red, downwards arrow, and then nothing for 0. Now if I press OK, now it just gives me the upward and downward arrows. So conditional formatting has its own benefits and custom formatting has its own benefits. So wherever you want an easier picture to look at, because all your clients or even yourself, you might not always have the time to look at all the data in a lot of detail. So here, if you just glance, you can see that, okay, these 3 have gone down, these 3 have gone up, these 3 have gone down, these 4 have gone up, right? So that way you can easily identify what the data is doing. Now, this is just one of the function of custom formatting. You can, of course, make any new changes and whatever data you are working on, accordingly, you can insert the custom formatting function. Now, for example, here I go to insert symbols, go to symbol. Instead of the up and down arrow, say I want a dot. I click on insert, close. I'll just copy this dot. Again, I'll select this data. I'll go to control 1. And wherever the data is negative, instead of the downward arrow, I want a dot. I'll press OK. So now for the negative options, there is a dot. So here you can explore a lot. I wanted to show the directional movement, or rather the delta from the previous month. Hence, I had specifically used the upwards and downwards arrows. If you want, you can make any other changes as per your needs. And this is also slightly complex. I also started using this around a couple of months back after using Excel for 8 years. So I recently discovered this. So if there is any doubt regarding this, then you can ask me. Is everyone following along well? Is the speed of the session going right? Do you want me to speed up, slow down, or the current speed is good? You can give your feedback in the chat. Yeah, I can see one okay speed. Others, is the speed going okay for you? If at any point you feel that the speed is not good, or I need to speed up or I need to slow down, then you can always put it in chat. Okay, the speed is good for all of you. So I'll move to the next thing on today's agenda then. The next thing is the rank function. So for that, we'll use yesterday's data once again. So this was the table which I had used as a base for making the transaction list. Now I want to see what is the cost of each item and what is the rank. So now if I filter this and I sort it from largest to smallest, now I can see that, okay, cricket bat is rank number 1, tennis racket is rank number 2, hockey stick is rank number 3, and so on. But this becomes very tedious when you have a big amount of data. So for such a thing, you can use the rank function. Rank function works as is equal to rank EQ tab, then which numbers rank you want to see. So I want this number's rank, and what is the part in which I want to see it. So this is the area in which I want to rank it. If I press enter, so this is the first rank. Now, if I copy paste this data, do you think I'll get any errors, or will I get the answer properly? Any thoughts from members who are using it for the first time? Will I get any errors, or will this formula just easily drag over here? Yes, I have received a message from Preeti and Nikita that I haven't locked the cell reference. So if I just drag this formula over here, it shows 11111 for all the ranks. So why is the case? Wherever I'm moving, the first row had the proper answer. But for the second row, the selection array moved one row below. So now this is the best rank in all of these. Now this is the best rank in all of these. So now I'll again have to fix the reference by pressing F4, F4. And now if I copy paste this, now it will give me the proper ranks. Now the rank function can be used in multiple ways. So whenever you are evaluating your data, you can see that, okay, how many number of transactions are there? What is the average amount of the thing? What is the number of customers that are buying a certain thing? And accordingly, you can give the ranks. Now here I have ranked it in a descending order. Here instead, if I put comma and I put 1, so now it will be in ascending order. So if you want to use rank as a scoring, then you can, or in a negative way, then you can use the ascending order. Otherwise, you can use the descending order. Now I'll come back to this column where I said scoring when I use the count and sum function, countif and sumif function. So is there any doubt in the rank function? This is pretty straightforward, I think. Okay, I guess there are no doubts. So I'll move to the next formula, that is goal seek. So now here I have prepared a table. Again, let's use formatting as we learned yesterday. Go to this tab, all borders, select the top row, coloring, font coloring, bold, and center. Now this table looks better than it was before, right? So if you see this formatting and this formatting, it is the same. So it is important to know that whenever you are preparing different sheets, if you keep the formatting consistent, then you can easily identify or you can easily work with the data since it's easy on your eyes. It becomes sort of a muscle memory. So now here I have prepared an interest table where there is opening balance. What is the interest for that month or year? What is the total amount that is payable? Then installment amount we have to figure out, and what is the closing balance. So for the installment amount, I have to find a figure which will be in such a way that my final closing amount has to be 0. Like there has to be no outstanding amount left. So for this, I can manually try 10,000. Okay, I'm just paying off the interest every year and the principal amount is left. Okay, maybe 15,000. Okay, still some amount is left, so I have to go higher than that. 16,000. 4375. Some amount is still left. 16,500. Now it is negative, so I am paying more than I need to. 16,250. Now still amount is left. So doing this manually becomes very tedious. So there is a function in the data tab, what if analysis called as goal seek. So if you click on this function and it asks you which cell you want to define. So here, this is the last cell that I want to define. And what should be the value? 0. And this is by changing which cell? So this is by changing the first cell. Now if I press enter, now the multiple trial and error thing that I was doing, 10,000, 15,000, 16, 16,500, 16,250 and so on. So now you will see it on the screen that Excel does it for me. So Excel did multiple trials and found out that 16,275 was an amount by which my total final amount becomes 0. Now, this goal seek function can be used for multiple different uses, such as finding, okay, over three semesters, I have scored X, Y, Z marks. Now I want my average marks to be 70% at the end of the year. So what is the figure which will give me the 70% marks? So now this is a very simple example, but in your life or in your professional or personal life, you will come across situations where you want to figure out one single figure which solves the rest of the equation. So for such a thing, goal seek works really well. Now another function I'll quickly cover over here. That okay, for this I had to do lots of effort, but since it's Excel and it's a financial tool, there should be some function where I can just directly calculate the amount of installment, right? So for that, there is a function called as is equal to PMT, which is payment. So calculates the payment for a loan based on constant payments and a constant interest rate. Then tab. So what is the rate? So rate I had defined here as 10%, comma, n per. So what is the number of periods? The periods is 10 years. And PV, what is the present value? So 1 lakh was the present value of the loan, starting value. Now if I press enter, here I get minus 16,275, which was the same as we got from the goal seek. Goal seek, this cell, 0 by changing this cell. Okay. 16,275, 16,275. So this matches. So for this specific function, I had a direct formula. But for some other functions where you don't have a formula, goal seek becomes very easy. I purposely used this example to show you what exactly the formula does and how it works. Now in the payment formula, you saw that there is rate, number of periods, present value, future value, and so on. So like it is PMT, if you enter is equal to rate, is equal to N per, is equal to PV, then you can just replace the numbers in this formula and get your answer. So whether if you want to calculate rate, just write is equal to rate. Now you can see N per, PMT, PV. If you write is equal to N per, now you can see rate, PMT, and PV, so on. So from this one formula, you can calculate multiple different things. So here I've also included one of the written calculation formula that I spoke about right now. So is there any doubt in the goal seek function? Goal seek is something that probably not everyone would have used before. I'll just wait for 30 seconds to see if anyone has any doubt. Okay, I have received a message that There are no doubts, but it's a complex. It's a bit complex. So yes, some of the functions that I'm covering today are a bit complex to learn in 2.5 hours. But my job here is not to help you master it immediately, but to introduce you to these functions. And once you practice them by yourself, it will start coming naturally to you. So this function, when I discovered it, that was back in 2015 or 16, and that is almost 7 years ago. So over 7 years, I've understood it well, and by practicing now, it becomes a very natural thing for me. But since some of you are looking at it for the first time, with practice, you will also feel that this is easy. Now let's look at a solver function. So for this, let's go to the agenda tab. Here, yesterday we made a table, customer A, B, C, then March, what were the sales values, April, what were the sales values. Now, what we did in goal C, we could calculate the value of a single thing. But what if there are multiple different constraints and you want to calculate the value of different cells? How do you do that? So for that, there is a solver function, again in the data tab, solver. Now, some of you might not be able to see it. So then you will have to click on file, click on options. There you will see the add-ins tab. So click on add-ins. There is Excel add-ins, go. And here you will see multiple different tool packs. So for that, if the solver add-in is not ticked, tick on that, press OK. And now you will be able to see the solver add-in over here. Does everyone have the solver add-in? Anyone who doesn't have the solver add-in in their Excel right now? Okay, I guess everyone has the solver add-in. So if I click on solver, then it shows me multiple different functions. Maximize, minimize, and set cell to a value of specific thing. Like we selected 0 in the last situation, here you can maximize, minimize, and set a selective value. So now here, let me click on maximize this cell, which is the sum, by changing cells, these cells. And now if I just say solve, then it won't make any sense because there are no constraints. So it will just be infinity, infinity, infinity. But sometimes there are constraints such as customer A and customer B together can be only 800. So for example, this is less than 800. This cell is less than or equal to 800. And this cell has to be necessarily 500. So now looking at this simple equation, we can see that less than or equal to 800 and the function is maximize. So it will select the highest value that is there in the constraint. So it will be 800. Second thing, E6, again less than or equal to 800 and the function is maximize. So again, it will select the maximum value in the constraint. which is 800. And third thing, that this value has to be 500. So that is the constraint. So it will stay as 500. So now if we press OK, so this should have worked. Okay, for now, there seems to be some error in the function at my end. During the break, I'll just go through this once again, and then I'll come back to this function once again. The next function is the if and similar variants. So whenever you speak normally to someone and you say that, okay, if this is the situation, then this will happen. If not, then something else will happen. So the if in Excel also works very similar to the same thing. So here, if I have to find something from this table that we had formed yesterday, I'll just paste special the values. Convert the formatting where I can easily read it. And now the formula, if tab, now there's a logical test. What is the condition that you want the test to satisfy? So if this cell is greater than 50,000, then if you don't give any answers, then it will give a true or false. So for now, I won't give any answers. Then true. So now I can see if it is bigger than 50,000, it's true. If it is smaller than 50,000, then it's false. So this if function can be used for multiple different things. So one of the example can be, here I have just included true or false. But say you have multiple different customers and you have to decide that, okay, which are my priority customers and which are my lesser priority customers. The ABC analysis that you do, or a Pareto principle that you use. So if the value is greater than 50,000, you have to use the double exclamations for inserting text. Then you can say priority customer. And the rest can be sundry customer. So now if you copy paste this formula, it will give you a quick function that, okay, which are the priority customers and which are the sundry customers. So now for the total, I don't need it. Category of customer, put it in a border. And now if I have to filter this, now I can easily filter it by, okay, which are my priority customers? Okay, Aishwarya and Priya are the priority customers. And which are the sundry customers? Okay, rest are the sundry customers. Now this is just the if function. But if can also be used along with a few other functions. For example, there is the Sumif and CountIf function. So here I'll just copy paste this. Now I want to see what is the sum of amount for priority customers and what is the count of priority customers. Now here I'll have to manually filter it. Priority customer, what is the sum? Okay, it is 1,13,950. Then for sundry customer, what is the sum? It is 2,77,200. But where the categories are more, it is tougher to see what the sum or whatever the count is. So instead you use sum if, like yesterday's sum function, today's if function, combined it's sum if range. What is the portion on which you want to use the if function? So this is the criteria, comma, rather this is the range. What is the criteria? I want them to be the priority customer and comma. Now I'll select the sum range. Now I can easily see 1,13,950, which was earlier seen by using the filter. Similarly for COUNTIF, I'll select this is the range, comma, this is the criteria, and now I have the answer. Like I can just paste the formula downwards, but then again I haven't put the absolute reference. So I'll go back to this F4, 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 F4. Here, F4. Now if you see, I haven't frozen the middle thing, which was the criteria. Because when I paste this downwards, instead of priority customer, I want to select the sundry customer. So if I just copy this and paste this, I can easily figure out that, okay, 1,13,950 is the priority customer amount and sundry customer amount is 2,77,200. This is the count. Now this will also help me calculate the average of the customers. So this divided by this divided by this. So now I can know that, okay, my sundry customer gives me an average revenue of 30,800 and my priority customer gives me an average revenue of 56,975. So a similar analysis can be done for multiple different things, that say if this was a table of students and divisions and their marks. So what is the average marks of a student from division A? What is the average mark of a student from division B? And so on. Now here I again used average by manually dividing it. But what if I don't want to go through this whole process? Then I can just use the average if function. Again, same as sum if. What is the range? This. Now I'll freeze it, comma, what is the criteria? Priority customer. And what is the range of average? Among these things. Again, I'll freeze it. Now if I paste it downwards and convert it into comma separated values, then now I can see that, okay, 56,975 was the average above with a longer method, and 56,975 is the average here directly with the formula. So right now I've covered if, sum if, count if, and average if. So any doubts regarding this? Okay, I see no doubts in the chat. So in the newer version of Excel, there is also a function called as ifs. So there you can insert multiple criterias for sum ifs, count ifs, and so on. So I'll just cover ifs and how it is used. So here I'll just add one more column and say category detail. Now, rather than just priority and sundry, I want to give them different levels, class A, class B, class C, and class D. So here I'll use, first I'll do it with if, and then I'll show you how ifs works. Is equal to if this is greater than 50,000, then value if true, I'll say class A. Comma, what if value is false? So if I don't put anything, it will show as false. But now I want multiple criteria to be put in. So I'll have to use if once more. So if this is greater than 40,000, then class B. Now again value if false. Now I want four criteria. So I'll have to put in if once more. If this is greater than 30,000, then class C. And now for class D, I don't have to put if once again because that is the last item that is remaining. So I can just put comma class D and press enter. So how the formula basically reads is if this amount is greater than 50,000, then class A. If it is greater than 40,000, then class B. If it is greater than 30,000, then class C. And if not all of these, then class D. Now if I press enter, it shows class A. So now I can see here what are the different criteria. Now here I can again use sum if. This is the range. Criteria is class A, comma. This is the sum range. Enter. So now I can see the values as per different criteria. Again for COUNTIF, I'll use the similar function. This is the range. This is the criteria. This is the answer. And for average, I'll again use the same function. This is the range. This is the criteria. And this is the range for average. So now I can see that even in further detail. Here I thought that, okay, sundry customers average is 30,800. But then I can see that, okay, three customers have 18,567 and they are pulling the average down. But otherwise class B, one customer is 4,400 and class C, five customers, which is the highest, is 36 to 20. So now I can see the different categories and their averages, right? So this you can expand as much as you want. Say you can make a 5,000 rupee gap in that, say 50,000, 45,000, 40,000 and so on. Here, instead of if you want to use ifs, then it will be if this is greater than 50,000, then class A, I'll use class 1 over here, comma. For ifs, You don't need to put another if. You just need to put the second logical test and the true criteria for that. Third logical test and true criteria for that. So again, you will select this, comma, 40,000, comma, class 2, comma. What is the third logical test? It was 30,000. So again, select this, 30,000, comma, class 3, comma. Now here you can't just enter the last value that is there. Here you will have to give the final function. This greater than say 10,000, comma, class 4. So now the last value is 4,000. So it is showing NA. And here, since we changed the names, these values are now 0. So for the ifs function, you don't need to mention if once again. You just need to mention ifs and put the logical test and value if true. Logical test, value if true. So for this, I'll just show you one of the workings that I had done after the break. So for now, let's take a break for say 5 minutes and get back by 11:17, 11:20 or so. I'll just share this sheet in the chat and the Zoom chat and the WhatsApp chat so that you can check the formulas at your end. And if you have any doubts, then you can ask me regarding the same. So we covered if and variants, and now let's go to the drop down. So let's take this data once again. Now if we keep this cell as blank, and we go to data validation, then it shows you what are the values that you can enter. From the data tab, you have to go to data validation, this part over here in data tools. Here you can see list. And what is the source of this list? These four, class A, B, C, D. And now if you press OK, so now you see this drop down arrow that is there and it shows class A, B, C, D. For now, let's delete this. Highlight this cell. Okay. So now I want to see what is the sum, count, and average of specific class of customers. So here I'll select class A. This is the function. This is the answer. Class B, this is the answer. Class C, this is the answer. Class D, this is the answer. So where you have to present a dashboard and you have limited space for everything, you can just insert a drop down by selecting a cell, going to data tab. In data tools, there is data validation. In allow, you have to select list, and in that list, you have to select whatever is your source. So these four cells, class A, B, C, D, was the source for my list. Since these were the classes available over here, I pressed enter and enter. So whichever value I want to see, it gets easily selected or represented over here. So this is the drop down function that I covered over here. Any doubts for the drop down?
From where is it taking the reference? I mean, your
So
W cell you had defined it, but how is it taking references from P column?
from P column, right? So here we have used the Sumif function. I'll just remove this. So in the Sumif function, it says this is the category, this is the criteria, and I want the sum of this amount. So currently it is blank. COUNTIF is also similar, average is also similar. So these are the four classes A, B, C, D that I have. So here if I type in class A, then it won't let me select it because now I have given a restriction. So now from the drop down, if I select class A, then it is giving me a sum if that in this criteria or in this range, which is the criteria of class A and what is the sum. In this
Got it.
range, yeah. So that way, if you don't want four cells, like a full table that we had earlier, then we can easily select this. If I copy paste this, this was the full table that was available to us earlier. If I don't want to see the full table and if I just want a single row from which I want to work, then this works really well. Right. So I'll just pause the sharing and recording here for a bit, and I'll open up a file from my work and I'll show you how this thing can be used for a bigger purpose. Resume recording. So after this, there is a return calculation formula. So this I think is a bit of personal finance and something that I feel everybody needs to be aware. So for this, we will be using this table. Again, I have purposely kept this table separately and without any formatting because every time I'm using it, I'm formatting the cells in front of you. Okay. So if you mess up, you just need to do Control Z for undo. And these are the only two cells which I need to format. This center alignment. Yeah. So here I have made a table of an SIP. Everybody of you, all of you must be aware of what SIPs are. So for example, every month I am investing rupees 10,000. So since the money is going out from my pocket, it is a negative sign. So 1st Jan, 1st Feb, 1st March. So over the year, I have invested 1,20,000 rupees. And at 31st December, the value has become 1,50,000. So now, if I don't know the return calculation formula, I'll think that, okay, 1,20,000 is my investment. 1,50,000 is the value. So I made a 30,000 rupees profit and 30,000 divided by 1,20,000 is 25% return. But that is the wrong way of looking at that, because this first 10,000 that is there, that was invested for full 12 months. The second 10,000 that is there, that was invested for 11 months. The third 10,000 that is there, that was invested for 10 months, and so on. So now, how do you calculate the return on this? So for that, there is a function called as XIRR. So it gives the internal rate of return for a schedule of cash flows. So you have to select your values, comma, select your dates. And the guess part, you don't need to use it right now. So now this shows that the return was actually 49%. And earlier, when we were doing simple calculation, 30,000 divided by 1,20,000, the return was coming out to be 25%. So sometimes your return that you are thinking might be actually lower than what you have actually received. And sometimes it might be much higher than what you are going to receive. So again, whenever next time you get an investment proposal or something like that, or you are doing your own cash flow that, okay, for the next 5 years, I'm going to invest 1 lakh rupee in some project. And at the end of that, I am expecting that, okay, this much is the value that I should be getting. Or for example, today I'll be investing 1 crore in a house. Every month I will be getting, say, 20,000 rent. Then how many, then over say 15, 20 years, what is the return that I will be getting on that asset? Since I personally work in investment advisory, I am taking more examples related to that. If you want to share any thoughts of your own about your own profession or business, you can share how you would apply it in your field as well. Is this return function clear for everyone?
Yes.
So while beginning any new project also, everyone has to do a cash flow analysis. So for example, for the first 3 years, the company might have to invest XYZ amount in machinery, plant and building, a new office premise, and so on. And then the revenue will start flowing over the next few years. So there, if you want to calculate whether the project is viable or not, whether the return is positive, negative, in such a situation, you can use this XIRR function. Any doubts regarding the XIRR function? Okay, I guess there are no doubts for now. Now, formatting and merging errors. So recently I came across a query from one of my friend. He shared this attendance report of some company, and he wanted to understand how this work duration was being calculated. So right now we can see that, okay, the in time was 7:50 a.m., the out time was 11:10 a.m., and the work duration was 3 hours, 20 minutes. But this, if you try to just subtract, okay, 11:10 minus 7:50, then it's giving me a odd figure, which I don't really understand. So if I need this in hourly terms, firstly, I'll have to format this data properly. So if I see this H column, then it is normal. But if I see this I and J columns, then it was merged. This column is merged. So many of you would be using this merge function, which then becomes a problem, because if I have to select this column by pressing Control and space, due to the merged cells, the full sheet is being selected. So for now, we will use the unmerge function. But now this sheet looks very weird, right? How to use the unmerge and yet have the sheet look good? For that, I'll take a fresh data set over here. maybe we can use this table. So suppose the name of this table has to be customer monthly sales. And now I go here, I use merge and center. Now if I have to select the March tab, control space, the whole thing is being selected. So it becomes very hard to work on this. But if you select this, and then instead of merging, again you click on control 1 or the formatting part, alignment, horizontal, you have to select center across selection and then press OK. So now if you select the March column, then it will give you just the March data. If you select the April column, then it will just give you the April data and so on. So instead of using this merge function that is very common in a lot of reports that I see, just select the same cells, press Control 1 and in alignment, select center across selection. Once you start using this, you will genuinely see that lots of time is being saved over this. Any doubts for the merge selection part? Okay, Preeti is saying that this is interesting. And yes, I have also discovered this thing last month itself. After years of using merge cells, I finally discovered this thing and it has been a lifesaver in multiple occasions. As this is a very small table. Whenever you have very big tables and you have lots of data to work on, you might have to select the full column multiple times. And every time when the full table gets selected due to merged cells, it becomes very irritating. And this is a good way to get across that part. Now, other formulae, I have kept space for that. So do you want me to cover any other formulae, any requests that are there, or any doubts that you had throughout this session or regarding any other formula that you use in Excel? Okay, if not, then we'll move to the final section, which is the advanced pivot part. So I won't be going too much into details or too much into power pivots since this is a new thing for many of you. So again, insert pivot table from table or range. This is the range. Then existing worksheet yesterday we inserted in. Today let's use a new worksheet. So yesterday I told you about shortcuts. When you press Alt, all this thing highlights. Then you have to go to insert. So N. Then pivot table is V. From table is T. So rather than every time manually going and clicking on things, if you get hang of the shortcuts, then it becomes very easy and you can insert different things or you can change different things very easily. So now again, let's use yesterday's customer, product, amount, category thing. So now here I have started with category, then the product, then the customer, and then the amount for each customer. Now here I'll go to the design tab and turn the subtotals on. So for my use, I keep them off usually. So now I've turned them on. When you are using pivot tables, more often than not, it will be already turned on. So here, one more thing that is there is chess set you can see in the first row, then there is a lot of blank rows. So if you copy and paste this data somewhere, then it can become tough to see which is the chess set portion, which is the Ludo portion, and so on. So here, if you go to report layout and repeat all item labels, then now you can see that, okay, all the labels are repeated and it's easy to see that, okay, this is a golf ball, Ishan, this is the purchase amount. Right? Now, yesterday when we did this, we didn't really go much deeper into pivot tables. I'll slightly touch upon a few things today. So here, if we see the amounts, they are based on an alphabetical order over here. So if you have to sort them, then you will have to remove this, and then you can sort them as per the uh, ascending or descending orders. So now if you see for every item, chess set, Ludo, and so on, now we have sorted the amounts as per the descending order. So instead of looking for everything and which is the maximum amount, which is the minimum amount, here you can directly see whatever your answer is. Now, if you put the amount category here once again and right click on it, then here it is giving you multiple options in show values as. Here you can see rank smallest to largest, rank largest to smallest, parent row total, parent column total, percentage of row total, percentage of grand total, and so on. So now if I select percentage of grand total, so now I can see that, okay, chess set purchased by Priya, the amount was 18,800 and the percentage was 4.81% of the grand total. Many times instead of this system, what people tend to do is that they will select this D4, go divide, scroll all the way down and select the grand total amount. Now it is 4.81 and this is the value that we see. But now, if we have to move things in the pivot table, if I had to add, say, units, so now this sum amount is gone because it is not a part of pivot tables. This additional column that I put in, that will be replaced since it was not a part of pivot table. So instead of using things or formula outside the pivot table, you can just right click on this part, show values as, and select percentage of grand total, column total, row total, that is based upon whatever analysis you are doing. Now here, for example, you can also select percentage difference from. So now, since we have the data for just this period, it won't be of use. But say you have a pivot table in which you have multiple different periods, say January, February, March, April, May, June, and so on. So if you select percentage difference from the previous period or previous month, then you can directly see the movement that is there between the different months. Say that plus 10%, minus 10%. Or if you wanted it amounts, then it can happen in amounts as well. So the repeated job that you will do, that first you will insert, make a pivot table. Then for each and every month, you will calculate this minus this, or this divided by this minus one, and so on. That effort gets saved just by right clicking over here, clicking on show values as, and then looking at the multiple options that are available over here. Right? And now in the pivot table, many of you would be knowing already, but if you just click on expand collapse and collapse entire field, so now you can see the board game wise, or rather the product wise totals. So the customer has been hidden since you collapsed the product tab. If you don't want the products also, and if you want to collapse the category tab, then again you go over here, click on collapse entire field, and now you can see directly category wise totals. And whenever you click on a plus sign, you see that, okay, these are the entries inside of this. And if you just want to explore what are the actual manual entries in all the data, then you have to double click on this amount and a new tab will open up. Here we can see that, okay, for the board game category, these were the transactions that were there. If I want to see what were the transactions in the cricket category, I'll double click on this. And I can easily see what are the transactions for cricket category. Right? Now, if you see here again, the sort function has not worked. So again, if you sort largest to smallest, now it will show that cricket is the biggest one, board games is second, tennis third, hockey and golf. And similarly, side by side, you can see the percentage of this.